Hey there, how's it going? Welcome back to part 2 of my race review. Now in part 1 I detailed the two buggies I plan to run at the races, a mildly modified Grasshopper 1 and a DT02 MS. So if you haven't seen that video you might want to check that out first. Also, I have a race report of my first ever race at Carnosa RC Park. There's a link in the description. Now, before we begin, I have to apologize for the quality of the footage. As I was entered into both the races and they were happening simultaneously, I had very little time to do any real filming. Just basically setting up the GoPro and leaving it running. So the footage isn't exactly stellar, but I do hope you get an idea of what the races were like. Now, speaking of the races, they're all done deathmatch style. What I'll do is I'll put the rules and regulations down in the description below, or you can look at one of my previous videos. So without further ado, let's get on and see how well I did. So qualifying round 1, I'm about 5th or 6th on the starting grid. My game plan was to not hit anybody and just drive consistently, but that lasted all of about 1 second. That's me having a collision with the person in front of me. It seemed that my DT02 accelerates quite rapidly, faster than I thought it would. So I began the race in the back of the grid. A couple of mistakes by a few people ahead of me let me jump up to about 4th position. I'm just about to come down the main straight now. I overcooked it trying to catch up, hit the barrier. I'm not exactly sure what happened now, but by the time I'd finished the double jump tabletop, I was into 2nd place and I was able to hold on to 2nd place. Always the bank at the far end is the trickiest part, especially from where you're standing. It's the furthest part away, but it's also the trickiest part. Now, you must get into this pit lane in order to get points. You can see me pulling in 2nd place. Ahead of me was another DT02, a DT03 behind me. Now, this is a different DT02 race that I was able to film from a different angle. And you got the tabletop, and right there you can see, right in the middle of the course, some cones have been put down. So for the races they'll put 2 or 3 cones, usually in the worst possible places, and they're designed basically to upset you. Grasshoppers, if you hit them, invariably will flip, and that's it, race over. You might get away with it with a DT02, DT03, but you have to be very careful, and they're always put right on the racing line. Another DT02 race from a different angle, so you can see the far side, and you've got the double banked turns. Again, this is one where it's really hard to judge, because as you hit the bank, your front suspension tends to load up, and so suddenly you've got a lot more front end grip, and it can make it very difficult to judge the amount of steering that you're going to need. The worst thing though is if you lose momentum on the bank, because with most buggies being rear weight biased, if you try and accelerate from a dead stop or even a slow speed, it just wants to wheelie and flip over, so it makes it a lot more interesting. A view of the starting grid. It's always tricky to know what to do here. Everyone's pretty much evenly matched for speed and acceleration, so do you try and get ahead of the pack, or do you hold back? I tend to be one to hold back and let the drama unfold in front of me, and then kind of like navigate my way around the carnage, as it were. And there you can see another good example of the cones doing an excellent job of basically making the race even more interesting and unpredictable, because you never know, the slightest mistake, if you hit one of those cones, yeah, you're going down. So this is my 2nd qualifying race, and I believe I started this one. Yeah, I'm at the front. And so I knew at this point that I'd got pretty good acceleration, so my game plan was just to run for it. Run, and just try to stay ahead of the pack without making any mistakes. I managed a really smooth run on here. The only tricky part, again, is when you come to this corner here, and the cone is right where you want to be, so you have to be kind of like navigate around it. If you get it wrong, yeah, you're going to go wide and somebody might overtake you. But this race, yeah, from start to finish, I was feeling pretty confident at this point, and managed to pull in first. My buggy, the DT02 MS, when I first started racing it didn't handle very well at all, but after some tuning sessions and some very helpful hints and advice from Andy Robinson over at Andy Robinson RC, I've managed to dial it in perfectly. I had a lot of issues with front end grip, just too much of it in fact, but now I've got the right amount. So if I really push in a corner, it tends to understeer a little bit, but that's just how I like to run it. So my third qualifying round, my DT02 accelerates pretty good, so I was able to stay ahead of the pack, and first lap I was pretty much always in first position. I did have a few problems though. Came down and I hit the cone right in the middle of the circuit right there and lost a bit of time, and then overcompensated and overcooked it in the first turn here, hit the barrier, and with a very fast racer coming up behind me, I felt the pressure and I started making a lot of silly mistakes, and he overtook me here at this point. I flipped and rolled, but fortunately landed back on my wheels, and that cost me first position and I rolled in second. But I was still very, very pleased, even to come second. Incidentally, the DT03 in front of me, driven by a very, very skilled driver, is an extremely highly modified DT03. I believe for this race, the gearbox has been reversed, so it's more of a mid-motor mount DT03 than anything else. Also very highly modified. So the fact that I could come in second against, a seasoned racer who's got much better driving skills than me and a more modified vehicle, I was pretty pleased. I mean, I think at the end of the day I had a lot of luck on the day. Just there you could see the Kumamon buggy. It hit a cone and flipped and rolled, and unfortunately landed on its wheels. Once again, you can see that the cone is doing that cone there caught me out on several times. The cones nearer to the driver's stand are a little bit easier to deal with, but the one right at the far end, just as you come down from the banks, that one caught me and several people out throughout the evening. And another shot of the starting grid. I really love that green holiday buggy. I'm a huge fan of the holiday buggy design, but I've always been put off by the simple fact I understand it's really, really difficult to paint the body due to the fact it's made from a flexible plastic. I know it can be done, but I believe it's really tricky to do and tricky to do right. But the driver, the owner of that buggy, he'd done an awesome job. And it's strange, it's a DT02, but it looks so much larger than all of the others. But yeah, out on the circuit, it looks fabulous. And right here, just to the left of the screen, you can see these two hit the cones and they're stuck, but he was able to free himself and to make it to the finish line. Yeah, 3 cars down. And in fact, in a couple of races, I think there was one race where only one person managed to actually finish. So this is my 4th qualifying round. Once again, I managed to get right out in front of the pack, which is really beneficial, especially if you can get through the tabletop turn before everybody else. Once I was in front, I just tried to relax and just to drive consistently and smoothly, and that was pretty difficult because I had one of the fastest people, and in fact the race series winner, he would later go on to win both the Grasshopper and the DT02 race series. He was right behind me, and I know he's a fantastic driver, so I was really kind of like pushing as fast as I dared, but and trying not to make a mistake at the same time. Unfortunately I didn't, and so I managed to come in first place for the 4th round in qualifying. Now this is one of the Grasshopper races, and straight away you'll notice that the Grasshoppers are extremely modified, slammed down at the front, blitzer beater wheels and tyres, stadium blitzer wheels and tyres at the rear, very, very heavily modified. In fact, it looks so different to, on the left hand side you can actually see a completely bog standard Grasshopper 2 and just how much they differ in ride height and setup. The wider stance really does help, particularly on the far bank, where the Grasshopper in its standard form, it struggles to climb, and then when it does climb, if you upset the balance even in the slightest, or you lose momentum, it will roll. If you get stuck up there, you're going to come tumbling down. And so I think a lot of people do the wide stance mod just be for more stability. It doesn't really, I don't think it gives you much more in terms of speed. And certainly I noticed my Grasshopper, it wasn't slower except for on the straight, where obviously, you know, the larger wheels and tires give you a bit more top end, but for most of the circuit, because it's quite small and technical, you know, having a really fast top end isn't of a huge benefit. So on to my final qualifying race. Very apprehensive with this one. Now I got a good start, and I've noticed my DT02 accelerates pretty rapidly. I guess it's because I'm running the 17 tooth kit pinion. I think a lot of the people running the 19 tooth that you can run on the standard DT02, DT03 chassis. Either that, or I guess, I don't know, with pure speculation, I guess mine is quite light compared to a lot of other people. Very minimum mods, not running motor fan or anything like that. But yeah, I was able to stay right out in front, but a couple of mistakes allowed some of the people behind me to catch up, and I was driving very kind of like cautiously. I didn't want to crash or anything like that, and I just by a car length managed to enter the pit lane first and claim first position. So with that, I'd won 3 out of the 5 qualifying rounds and came second in the 2 others. So I was over the moon at this point. I had no expectation of doing as well as I did. I think luck, with these races, luck also plays into it. If you're lucky that you don't crash or you don't get crashed into. But yeah, I was at this point, I could have lost every race after that, and I would have been happy. So with qualifying over, I got put into the A main for the final. I did okay. I don't remember exactly where my positions were. My GoPro batteries had died by this point, so no footage, I'm afraid. But yeah, the evening ended. I came joint second in the A main. Another driver also came second. He graciously allowed me to take second place, and he took third. So yeah, for my first DT02 race, it couldn't have gone better. I was over the moon. I really enjoyed myself. Now the same could not be said of the Grasshopper. I say I didn't enjoy myself. I had a blast, and the entire evening from start to finish was just wonderful. I didn't do too well in the Grasshopper race. Driving Grasshopper on an indoor carpet high grip surface is unbelievably difficult. Yeah, you can say high end is difficult, but trust me, try and run a Grasshopper on an indoor course, high grip indoor course, with bank turns and stuff like that. You will rapidly appreciate just how hard it is to drive these things. You know, so bad handling that it just makes everything such a challenge, but in a good way. And considering that my Grasshopper is very mildly modified, I thought I didn't do too badly. So I didn't get any Grasshopper footage, but I finished off in the C main, and I think it was second in the C main, which I was pleased about. The race season is over, but for the next season, I do plan to do some more mods to the Grasshopper. But nevertheless, I had a great time. It was wonderful. It was fun. I'm sure everybody else had a great time too. So I'm really looking forward to next season's racing. Now, next month will be the first in the new race series starting Carnosa RC Park, a TT02B, which I'm kind of excited about. And I believe a lot of the other races are, because I was listening in on some conversations, and you know, I think, because this is going to be the first race in a new series, everybody's starting off at the same kind of like base point. All of our buggies are going to be somewhat similar in terms of modifications, and you know, going forward we're going to work out what works well, what doesn't. So it's going to be interesting to see how the race pans out next month. Well, that's it for my race report. I hope you enjoyed this race series report. If you did, hit that like button, subscribe for more. My name is David. You've been watching Carnosa RC, and I'll catch you in the next one. Oh, before I go, I do have a load of autumn running footage in the can. Just work has been unbelievably busy. I've been doing lots of stuff for racing, and so I've got the footage, but finding the time to edit it is proving difficult. But there are several autumn running videos coming in the pipeline, so stay tuned for those. And eventually I do plan to get around to building the Turbo Optima to complete my legendary series. It's been sat in a box for the best part of a year now, so I've got that to build. I also have a Blackfoot, a Chimney to build. What else? I've got several things that are just waiting to build. It's just finding the time and the money to do it. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next one.